Movie we're talking about is called Run, Sweetheart, Run. This movie is on Prime.
Okay, so we're watching this because during our top 10 era thing we did on the podcast last year, at the end of last year, we were asking our better halves what their favorite movies of the year were and stuff. And so I asked my girlfriend, and she kept mentioning because she talked to me and to Adam, and she mentioned Run, Sweetheart, Run twice. So we're like, this is clearly the one that she remembers the most and the one that she's most fond of, and she is a big fan of like horror movies. So we decided, well, none of us have even heard of this movie, so this is a movie that we have to check out. Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right. Yep.
Very
Well,
accurate.
so we decided we're going to come to the stable this shit, and so we did this week, and this is a movie directed by Shauna Festa, and the lead in the movie is played by Ella Belinsky. She plays Sherry, and she's a secretary at a law firm, and she gets a call from her boss to take a client out to dinner. The client is Ethan, played by Pilu Asbeck, and he is kind of peculiar. He has a really strange reaction to a dog. He's like super dashing, but he's a little sinister. And things go really well. And it turns out that it turns from a business like dinner to like a date. And as the night continues and things get weirder, we start to see Ethan, more of Ethan, and he attacks her at one point and at random, and then starts haunting her the rest of the night. The less details you know, kind of, are the better going into this, I think. This could have been just another like weird feminist horror revenge flick, but it's kind of different. It's not like Teeth. It's not like Adam's number one of a few years ago, Revenge. It's more like Fresh, the movie that came out last year, but it's way less specific and way less contained because this movie gets pretty nuts. The only film I've seen from Festa is this forgettable romance like 15 years ago called The Greatest. This is a way big change in tone from that, but it does start out kind of cute, like before it really opens up. And when it opens up, it like does so suddenly. It doesn't like lull you into anything. It just happens, and then you're on the run with the character. The cast is interesting. We have like a really popular Danish actor. We have one of Charlie's Angels. Marie Schrader is in this. Oscar nominee Shora Agdashlu and Clark Gregg. There are a few scenes that feel like checkpoints, like video game cutscenes. So the writing's not as creative as other elements of the movie, but it works in this context. Like we need those scenes to get an idea of what is actually happening. And there's a feeling of not really being able to trust any one character just based on something that some hooker says in a jail cell, and that really gives you the idea of what you're dealing with here. The movie gets pretty wild. There's some Evil Dead in there with the supernatural elements, especially because like the violence is off screen for so long. Like when we actually see like the decapitation that starts everything, it's absolutely shocking. The kind of restraint that it takes to not actually show you anything for like the first hour or so is like pretty admirable to give yourself a cool payoff. I can't really say I was ever really on top of the story because there's really sharp turns. It has a cool nighttime setting, the whole thing, the colors, the extremes. It all becomes increasingly like a really good survival video game with all sorts of crazy side characters. It's sort of like, it's like less icky than like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's more dangerous than like the paranoia you feel when you watch Resurrection. But it's also way weirder. I'm giving it 3 stars, but this is absolutely an Adam movie, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't give this 3.5 stars.
Yeah, I think we can all agree with that. I'll go next on this one. Yeah, I'm right with you. I'm giving it 3 stars too. This was a lot of fun. It was I didn't know what I was getting into other than the description on IMDb, which says a girl has a date and now the date's trying to kill her.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of goes from there. I think what Pilau Asbeck, however you say his name, he's kind of perfect in this. Is kind of like this. He gives off this Christian Grey type vibe, but he kind of goes full overboard with it. And I remember him from Game of Thrones. He played Euron Greyjoy, who is kind of this insane character there as well. And yeah, the persona works perfectly. I think the main actress Ella Balinska is awesome in this and gives a great performance. Clark Gregg is kind of perfectly cast as this insane creeper. Um, yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. You got to turn off your brain for parts of it, and that's fine. But it is a lot of fun. It does have some things that it's trying to say, but it kind of goes all in and just kind of goes for it instead of hiding some of it. And you got to give it some credit for that as well. I don't know. I had a lot of fun with this. I watched it last night with the wife. She was creeped out by it, and she hates scary stuff. So Zach, I think you just watched this, right?
I did just watch it. Yes, just in the nick of time. This is going to be a thrice approved movie. I think it definitely has some Adam components, but I am always in favor of movies where men get destroyed by women, where men have it coming. I mean, that is catnip for me. I will always like a kick-ass feminist message like this movie has. I actually really liked the first 20, 25 minutes of this movie. I think it creates a really fascinating scenario. The movie that this movie reminded me of a lot of movies. We've thrown out a lot of titles, so I'll make sure to throw out a few more. What I thought of in the first 25 minutes of this movie was actually Barbarian, because Barbarian, in a similar way, begins as almost this rom-com, but you know going into the movie that it's not going to be a rom-com. You know something is messed up, but you're not exactly sure how it's going to be messed up. I'm shocked that Bill Skarsgård did not play that character. That would have been a perfect fit for that. But,
Alexander Skarsgård, I think, might have been better though. He always plays the creep, the male chauvinist.
Well, name that Skarsgård.
Pretty much.
I like this movie a lot. It you know, in a way, this is what I wrote down. I said it's kind of a perfect movie for the 2020s. It's kind of interesting that IMDb lists it as a 2020 movie, yet it got the release last year. I don't know what the story is behind that.
I looked at the release dates. It premiered at 2020 Sundance, then pandemic happened, and then came out last summer on Prime.
Well, what's interesting about that is I thought about a bunch of movies. I also thought about Everything Everywhere All at Once, in the sense that, like, this is a very maximalist movie, okay? There's not a lot of ambiguity. There's not a lot of nuance. And the movie is fully embraces that identity. And I say more power to it. I like this movie actually more than Everything Everywhere All at Once, because it was just slightly more grounded in reality. But I think it's sort of endemic of the way that movies are going. In fact, I think you could almost, in a way, sort of maybe call this movie a little bit of a knockoff of it. If it came out like 2 years from now, people would say it's a knockoff of it, in the sense of, like, it's a realistic story, but it's framed in such a way that is so wacky and so loopy and so much like a video game. And there's no multiverses in this movie, but you know, it's maximalist, right? It's got the One Crazy Night thing going for it, which is engaging. Another movie that I thought of too, which I recently watched for the first time, is the 90s cult. Well, it's not a cult, but 90s classic Sleeping with the Enemy, with my favorite actress, Julia Roberts, which basically has the exact same plot of this movie. And it's kind of interesting to look at how the idea of a woman who is beaten and abused, fleeing for her life, but then getting the strength to stand up to this guy and beat the shit out of him. How that story has been a truism throughout movie making, American movie making, but has now changed in the 2020s versus the way that it was done in the 1990s, which was very much kind of more grounded in reality. Because this is almost the exact same movie in some ways. I also thought there was a little bit of Promising Young Woman, tiny bit of like Sorry to Bother You. Armie Hammer also could have played that character as well, and a little bit of Get Out. It's also a little bit of like an episode of Lucifer too, because he's got really some demonic thing going. Yeah, I enjoyed the movie for what it was. I don't know if I would name it the best movie of the year. I don't know if the car crash was my favorite scene. Again, it's the best part of the movie is also for me the worst part, which is that it's a perfect movie for the Everything Everywhere era of filmmaking. It fits in perfectly with that aesthetic, and it is an Adam movie. And yet I've seen too many of those movies. I'm kind of tired of it. I want to go back to the realist mode of filmmaking, where it doesn't have to be the underground layer where Shohreh Aghdashloo is leading the resistance. I'm kind of tired of that. I think this movie had a compelling enough character. Like, actually, what you would tell Ashley, my favorite scene, actually, besides the beginning, was also when she goes back to her boyfriend, or her ex-boyfriend, I should say, and his new girlfriend. That to me was a fascinating mini movie in itself. I didn't need the other stuff. Like that one scene, and then the friend who does the tarot card reading for her is really fascinating. And no shock, that's like the most grounded in reality sequence in the movie, besides the opening 20 minutes. So I think there's something real here. I think the filmmaker's talented, the actors are all talented. I just wish it hadn't done the whole maximalist approach.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the Shohreh Aghdashloo, she's leading the resistance against the men. So, I mean, I would have thought that would have been the part that you liked. But I don't know. What's interesting about her ex is that, like she can't trust any person. So, and like the one prostitute says, like, you can't, like, he controls all men or something. So you're like, you have no idea what's going to happen when she gets there. So it's, I don't know. All of that stuff was super tense. But from that moment on, it was just like, I have no idea what to expect from the rest of this movie, but I'm kind of like all in.
The actor that plays the ex-boyfriend Trey, his name is Dayo Akaniyi. He is like the perfect like combination. Like if you were to do like that face meld thing with Winston Duke and Brian Tyree Henry, you would get him.
I thought that sequence of her in the car with him picking her up could have been a short film. Like that was so well done. And that was all the stuff without the special effects, without the blood.
Mhm.
That was a great exchange. And then when he brings her back to the house and we see the girlfriend / former best friend, great sequence. I did like that this movie uses menstrual blood. Most directors, especially male directors, stay away from that. I think this movie uses it really, really nicely. And like I said, I think it establishes the Shuri character really, really nicely. The title is nice too. I don't know why we needed the kind of manic, comic, self-aware approach. That does not change the fact that this is a good movie.
3 stars all around, thrice approved.
We just say quad approved. Because Ashley gave a thumbs up, and we know what Adam's going to think.
It's going to be an Adam's top 10 of last year.
Octo approved, or however many people on this podcast.